I rise to make a brief contribution on the motion and the amendment before the chamber. As members of Parliament, we have an enormous privilege in serving the communities that we represent. We have a responsibility to ensure that democratic principles are maintained. We have a responsibility to protect the accountability and the transparency that are implicit tenets within our democracy. This motion is about the provision of documents. It is also about holding the executive accountable to Parliament and the communities that we all represent. We acknowledge that the government has released some of the documents requested across various documents motions. We also acknowledge that some of these motions seek to capture a large and possibly excessive amount of information, and that the work required to be undertaken by departmental staff and the government itself to respond to these documents is no doubt time-consuming and onerous. To that end, we would be pleased to discuss with government how future document requests could be most efficiently and efficaciously processed. That said, the government could have chosen any time over the last, I think, 12 months. It's about a year since the first of these, or more than a year since the first of these documents requests were made. The government could have chosen at any point to have just opened a dialogue with the crossbench about the nature or the extent, and established some priorities for the release of some or all of the documents. But the government has chosen not to. And we're only having this debate because the government has done nothing other than send out the same old letters, which exclude the totality of the documents being requested, and it makes no attempt to open a dialogue. It's hard to fathom why it took, for example, the government almost 12 months to release the lay report into the supervised injecting room trial, into the supervised injecting service trial in the CBD, or why they chose to hide it for so long. In reference to that motion, I remind the government that we actually requested other documents in relation to the lay report that have still not been produced. The documents requested do not, I believe, require a great deal of work to compile, and notwithstanding the government's announcements last week in response to the report, we still require the government to release them. I would also appreciate if the government could clarify if they are continuing to claim executive privilege over this second tranche of documents that were requested with regard to the lay report, or are they just choosing to continue to ignore the Chamber's request? We are gravely concerned that this government continues to evade documents motions. And with the greatest respect to Mr Galea, who's now left us, this is not an extreme resolution, I mean, sorry, Mr Galea. This is not an extreme resolution. Rather, in giving the government another 2 weeks, to comply with the collective will, the collective democratic will of this chamber, with the greatest respect, it is much more like a slap across the face with a wet lettuce leaf. I mean, this is not extreme. This is simply trying to defend certain Westminster principles to which supposedly we all have a commitment. We have a moral imperative to ensure this government respects parliamentary process and lives up to its commitments, its public commitments, to accountability and transparency. Accordingly, Legalise Cannabis Victoria will be supporting this motion as amended. Thank you.